Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this unique event in this quite unique setting. Welcome to the carport. My name is Chris Bailey, and I'm here just to help John today. So a very warm welcome. I know some of you have travelled great distances, so thank you very much indeed. And for those of you who have travelled just 500 metres from Queen's Road as well, thank you very much indeed. We're getting here by 12:30. There will be in-flight food will be served in about 30 minutes. But before that, a lot of in-flight entertainment for you. And to lead you in it, please welcome Captain John Hoyt.
Thank you. Right, a few props here. Well, it's wonderful to see you all. Thank you so much for coming. Right. Okay, so today is Battle of Waterloo Day, isn't it? This is the great commemoration of the battle 199 years ago. That's why you've come, see you all wearing your spurs. So I'd just like to read something from this book. It says, Battle of Waterloo, 18th of June, 1815. One of the greatest and most studied battles in history. Now remarkably reassessed to reveal new intrigue, mystery, deceit, lies and error compounded over 175 years. Does that sound familiar? So I could add that Aerotoxic, 18th of June 2014, one of the greatest and least studied illnesses in history, now remarkably reassessed to reveal old intrigue, mystery, deceit, lies and error compounded over 60 years. And I'm afraid that's what's been going on. So, right. Thank you very much to the opticians at the back, Julie, for your card. It's very kind, all the girls. If you ever want a good opticians, they're over there. Thank you, Julie.
Sorry, where is that?
Who said that?
Right. So it's a bit of a grim subject here today, but it's all about solutions, because we're very positive people. Is that me? Yeah.
Hello, Aerotoxic.
Right, so it's all about solutions, although the subject matter is slightly unpleasant. And we've got 4 tasks today. And firstly, it's the 7th anniversary of the Aerotoxic Association. Woo! Thank you. Secondly, I'd like to present my book, Aerotoxic Syndrome, Aviation's Darkest Secret. And we're fortunate to have Phil Whiteley here who helped me write it, the ghostwriter. Next, there's a film called A Dark Reflection, which is about the issue. And last but not least, we're going to start an online petition, the first ever, which my mama is going to launch in about 20 minutes' time. That's right, Jonathan?
Yep.
Yeah. So that's the rundown on what we're going to do. Okay, just a bit of history. So Jim Avis will recognise this. This is the aircraft he used to fly once upon a time, crop spraying, had no health issues whatsoever, and Jim ran a really safe operation and did that for 8 years. And there I am.
What?
A bit follically challenged now, Chris. So then I went on to fly this aircraft called the British Aerospace 146 in 1989. And but within 6 months of starting to fly this aircraft, I got serious neurological problems, speech difficulties, memory problems, and I didn't know what it was. Well, after me now. So I kept flying because we were night flying and didn't ask too many questions, and as you do, you just keep going. So I did that for 8 years and put it down to night flying, my illness. So I then flew this beautiful aircraft for Fly B for about 6 years out of Birmingham Airport, and there I am with the crew. But I can tell you, when that photograph was taken, I was, gaga. It's really difficult to keep going. I just followed the checklist and pretty much knew I was going to fail at some point. So that's the background. These 2 people, I can probably say, saved my life. This is Captain Tristan Lorraine, a British Airways captain, and Dr. Susan Michaelis. She's a BA 146 pilot, but she's actually qualified as a doctor now. She did research into this issue. And have you got the book here? Mm-hmm. That's it. and she published this on the issue. So when they say there's no evidence of this thing, you know, that's the evidence. Yeah. Okay. Right, I'd like to show you now a quick film clip. Now this is from 2006. I'd just been grounded and didn't know why. And Channel 4 did a programme about it for their news. And you can see exactly what happened in 2006.
Air travel can damage your health. The links between flying and deep vein thrombosis in passengers is well known. But now there are fears for the health of pilots. A government committee is meeting tomorrow to investigate reports that pilots and cabin crew are being poisoned. Crews believe the air they breathe can be contaminated by chemicals from engine oils, and they accuse the government of ignoring the problem and downplaying the risks. Our science correspondent Julian Rush has seen new scientific evidence that suggests pilots have been contaminated by organophosphates.
The first officer smelled fumes and disgust was captain. Strong smell of burning. The first officer started to feel
Has confirmed significant exposure to pyrolyzed engine oil.
Both flight crew felt abnormal. The smell was a so-called wet sock, a sort of unpleasant, musty smell. It's very distinctive. I mean, everybody talks about it. Flight's fun, there's no question about it. But there's also reluctance to go fly because you think you've got to be in this gas chamber for 10 hours.
Pilots say they fear for their jobs if they speak out. Dozens are being declared medically unfit to fly after showing symptoms of neurological problems. The pilots' union BALPA has now collected anonymous reports of nearly 800 incidents of fumes or smells in the cockpit over the past 11 years. The top suspect is the oil used in many aircraft engines. It contains a chemical anti-wearing agent, tricresyl phosphate, or TCP. It's an organophosphate similar to many pesticides and to sheep dip, which has long been known to poison farmers.
Acute exposures, you get headache, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, a lot of other symptoms. And longer-term chronic exposure, folks complain of cognitive deficits, trouble concentrating, irritability, and so on and so forth.
2 planes figure prominently in the reports of fumes and sick pilots, the British Aerospace 146 and Boeing's 757. Both companies have ordered engine modifications and changed maintenance procedures to tackle the issue. The airlines admit incidents of smoke and fumes do happen, but they say there's no evidence they cause persistent health effects. But pilots are increasingly concerned that the real problem is low-level day-to-day exposure. The air to the cockpit contaminated with TCP at levels too low to smell, but which can build up in the body to cause long-term medical damage.
I want you to repeat after me.
Their fears appear to be confirmed by the results of psychological and neurological tests on 18 757 and 146 pilots carried out for the government's Committee on Toxicity.
5, 9, 12, 15.
Done by a leading researcher at University College London, the results reveal all 18 pilots had similar neurological impairment, with poor performance in mental flexibility, information processing, and attention and concentration. And the researcher has told the committee,
the profile of cognitive deficits cannot be attributed to factors such as mood disorder, malingering, or chance, and are of obvious concern to flight safety.
The tests don't prove a link to contaminated air, but some of the pilots also had blood and body fat tests for TCP. Several proved positive, including the pilot we spoke to.
I was naturally very alarmed when I found out the results. I thought, this is unbelievable. Everybody had the same. It shocked me, deeply shocked me. And for me, that's the proof of the thing, really, because you can't argue with figures, really.
So how does oil from the engines get into the cockpit? Well, every airliner flying today gets fresh air in the same way. It's drawn in through the engines, where the spinning turbines compress and heat the thin atmosphere. A small proportion of the hot, compressed air is bled off to feed the aircraft's air conditioning system, which is usually around a 50-50 mix of fresh and recycled air. But the fresh air is not normally filtered, so any contamination from leaking oils can form a fine, potentially toxic mist. Worried pilots recently sent flight deck air supply dust filters from British 757s to be tested in Canada. All 4 showed signs of TCP, as did swabs taken from the cabin walls of 757s. That evidence too is before the committee.
Mainly they've got to take it seriously. They have got to accept the evidence they've been given, that there appears to be a genuine problem. They need to address it, roll their sleeves up and get on and find a solution. Our pilots are losing their licenses on medical grounds because the CAA and various government departments are doing nothing about it.
Doing something would mean funding proper research that's not yet been done, even though the issue was first raised 8 years ago. Research that would benefit from new genetic knowledge that some people are more susceptible than others to organophosphates.
A lot of research needs to be done, but it's pretty straightforward. You can lay out what needs to be done in large part. One, we need biomarkers of exposure and determine for certain whether an individual has or hasn't been exposed. And it certainly won't hurt to have real-time monitoring on board to know if there's been an event, if tricrystal phosphate has come in through the bleed air.
No airline nor the Civil Aviation Authority would be interviewed, but all told us health and safety was their top priority. In the sign, perhaps, that plane makers realise there's a problem, Boeing's latest 787 Dreamliner will be the first not to suck in air through the engines. New technologies, they say, drove the decision, not fears of litigation.
Julian Rush, on the More for News flight deck tonight, Captain Sarah Smith.
Thanks.
So, that was 2006, 8 years ago. Shocking, isn't it? So I was grounded in 2006, and very quickly I became aware of massive information on the internet, and this is the key paper which dates back to 2000. It's actually first identified in 1999, so that's 15 years ago. They worked out that breathing oil fumes in confined space was not healthy. And this chap sadly died a couple of weeks ago, Chris Winder. But I guess the problem with this is that they put commercial flights at the top, and of course, that's not very convenient for airlines. So sadly, the airlines are saying this doesn't represent any evidence, which is not very good. So as soon as I found this word aerotoxic in 2006, I thought, well, I've got to do something. So I started the association in 2007, and this was taken on this day in 2007, 7 years ago in London. And here's Tristan Lorraine, Susan Michaelis, me, Julian, and the oil tin. And the oil tin actually says if you breathe the oil fumes, you will get neurological problems. So it does exactly what it says on the tin. It's like Ron Seal. Okay. So there we are. So here's the book, and that's what I've been working on for the last 12 months or so. Jonathan and mine design, really, so apologies for that, but I think it gets the message across. And of course, I said earlier that Philip Whiteley has been very kind to go to written it mostly, and Philip's here today, and I'd like him to read out the foreword, which was written by David Learmount from Flight International, who sadly can't be here today. Would that be okay, Philip? Yeah, thank you very much.
Just to emphasise, yes, it's not my writing. I was very pleased to publish John's investigation and research of the Westgate. Forward by David Learmount. Aerotoxic syndrome exists, but so does systematic denial by the aviation industry and its government backers. As an aviation journalist for 35 years at the time of writing this forward, for a long time I believed the industry when it told me, hand on heart, that the dangers to pilots and passenger health of engine oil fumes entering aircraft cabins was dramatically exaggerated and very rare. But eventually I agreed to meet 2 former airline pilots who had suffered damage and lost their careers to aerotoxic syndrome. I had, however, met others before and had not been convinced. So what made the difference this time? Tristan Lorraine and Susan Michaelis provided me with the technical data and evidence of something that had been going on for years, about 50 years. They informed me about the chemicals involved, the ongoing biochemical research into the damage these could cause to humans, the fume event occurrences and what makes them happen, and the human stories of pilots and cabin crew affected. And through them I met a network of aeromedical specialists and biochemists who were studying the issue in detail. Then I started asking questions again in the industry, but this time much better informed. No aircraft or aero engine manufacturer denies that fumes from engine oil can get into cockpits and cabins, nor do they deny that these fume events happen from time to time. They do not deny either that these engine oils contain organophosphate materials that can cause neurological damage in humans. The oil containers even have warnings on them to that effect, as we just saw. The reason the industry and its government backers can keep the lid on this issue is that the burden of proof about the damage these fumes can cause rests with the victims. The industry answers charges about health damage by denial and dissembling, which the system lets them do because of the rules about where the burden of proof lies. The industry's lawyers are masters of technical points of law that enable them to claim that the victims have no legal proof of a connection between a fume event and the symptoms that they suffer as a result. The lawyers can argue that the cause might lie elsewhere in the victim's life or in their metabolism, and this negative allegation is very difficult to disprove. There's a precise parallel here between the legal war fought for years between the tobacco industry and damaged smokers and the medical world, who were looking for the proof of a connection between tobacco smoking and lung cancer. Everybody knew that there was a connection, but the burden of proof was with the victims, until a precise biomarker could establish that the cancer was initiated by the effects of tobacco-based chemicals in specific individuals who smoked, and until that was established, the industry could go on denying. The only difference between these two cases is one of scale. The health effects of tobacco affect billions of people worldwide, whereas although aircraft fume events happen regularly, they only occur around once every several hundred flights. And when they do, some individuals are affected while others are not, because of metabolic differences between individual humans and the frequency of exposure that any individual suffers. The fact that fewer people are involved makes it easier for the industry and government to continue the denial, and more difficult for those damaged to seek any form of redress, or even acknowledgement of their medical condition. It means ordinary doctors are kept in ignorance of the syndrome and its symptoms, making misdiagnosis more likely. The fact is that, for those who are affected, the effect of aerotoxic syndrome on their lives can be devastating. For that reason, it is obscene that the industry washes its hands of this issue, and even worse, that governments collude, because there are ways of reducing or eliminating the risk of airborne fume events. But while denial exists and governments collude with the manufacturers and airlines, these remedies will not be applied. That is what this book is about. David Learmont, Operation and Safety Editor, Flight International, May 2014. I've actually known David for 20 years, partly by coincidence. I worked on flights in the early 90s. And he's a very experienced, intelligent, sceptical journalist, and will require a lot of convincing.
Thank you, Philip. And interestingly, Philip was engaged last July on this, and he, about January, he said, look, this is really serious what you've asked me to do here. So he actually wrote a dossier which he sent to the government and the CAA, and you'll get a copy of his dossier. It's in the book insert, so you can read that later. Philip wrote that. Thank you, Philip.
I've got a formal reply from the chair of the Civil Aviation Authority.
Right.
She didn't write it, obviously, but she signed it.
Yeah.
But that's on the record. They can't claim they weren't informed.
Sure.
That's all they said.
Thank you very much. Right, so I hope you noticed this little snappy little symbol down here. That's nobody will publish this book, so we don't give up easily. So we create our own publishing house, which is what you do, isn't it? If somebody says no, you just find a way around it. So a dear friend of mine, Peter Lawton, who taught me to fly, and I have started this publishing house, and it's called Pilot Press. So again, this is the launch of that, really. So. And interestingly, today I can't publish the book because we're still waiting for a key report which is about to be published itself, I think at the end of June, to be included in early July, so the full book won't go out for a few days. And then we're going to keep adding to it and being peer reviewed, so it's going to be an IE book, if that makes sense, information e-book, and I hope it'll be the first of its kind, really. So it'll never be concluded until they accept that there's a problem, I guess. So that's the way it is. So that's my idea for an IE book, really. We'll see how it works out. Okay, so on to the fun bit. I promised you a film earlier, and Tristan Lorraine, having made a documentary about this in 2007 called Welcome Aboard Toxic Airlines, a couple of years ago I said, well, come on, you need to make another film, and he said, no, nothing's changed, it's all the same, you know, we've got to do something different. So, as he did something different. And this is a thriller based on the issue for a new journalist point of view, really, and I've helped him make it. And it actually went to Cannes in the film festival in May, so hopefully you should see it in your local cinema soon. I'd just like to play you the teaser for it. Oh, go back.
40 years ago, Charles Jasper founded an airline with ethics.
Well, that was a near miss. 16.
I understand it, Mr. Birch, but not. So what do you have in mind?
I have a lead on a very big story.
If you were followed.
Why give on? Helen Eastman, standard.
Was an assistant sailor.
However, nothing that might affect safety is ever ignored, no matter how far-fetched or unlikely.
We will announce the new aircraft
At the international conference, it was weird. I never sleep.
Whatever and ever, or then the thing, his righteousness, for the sake of Jesus Christ.
So the Airlines flying aircraft that aren't airworthy. I prefer mail online, thanks. Find out what shit's in the stuff.
Got a standardized letter? All we've had.
Prove it!
Think about who I'd be taking on. We'd be taking on.
Do you know who it is?
Oh yes, the journalist. What's all this about?
Red Megan Cabriolet. My contact said that she's a listener.
Crew can't talk to the media.
Hello, it's Natasha Stevens here. May I speak to the Countess of Mar, please?
Unquestioning loyalty. But then, of course, you and Eve understand that.
Large sums of money have changed things.
Hush money.
You sure you still want to do this?
And what would you define as safe, sir? Flying a passenger from A to B in one piece, or flying a passenger from A to B without harming them?
Sir, do we deny her boarding?
I'm asking you, Mr. Joseph.
I want an end to her interference now!
It's getting a bit woodland scheme, isn't it? He was expendable.
Mist of heated product may be harmful by inhalation.
You're running out of time.
I know your background, Mr. Tillman. So the air you breathe on a plane comes from the engine?
Sorry, I should have done that earlier. It's the clapperboard from the film. Right, okay. Well, you notice there's a pilot's funeral in that film, and this is my buddy Richard Westgate, who sadly died 12/12/12, and he's going to be the principal part of a coroner's inquest in the next few months, and sadly Frank Cannon was meant to be here, he's representing him. But maybe we could just have a few moments reflection, silence. It won't be the full minute, because he wouldn't want that, so just think about all the poor people who have lost their lives to this thing, please. Right, that's long enough. He's a great guy, and this brother Guy is still flying for British Airways, so it's going to be a really interesting case when it comes to court. Well, sadly Frank Cannon can't be here today, but he's the principal lawyer up in Scotland who's on the case. Right, I think we're time for the petition, Jay. Can you get the laptop and my mama can launch a petition? So now this is all about toxic air detectors, because interestingly at the moment on jet aircraft, the only means of detecting toxic air is by the nose and the eyes, and that's the way it's done. I can assure you, any jet you get on these days, it will depend on the crew's sensors. And a lot of people suggest this is wrong, and just yesterday I got a very strong letter from America saying, no, this is not the way to do it in 2014. you should have toxic air detectors on board aircraft. And even in the Second World War, they had carbon monoxide detectors on frontline aircraft. So that, to me, is the easiest solution of the lot. And well, we're going to try and get 78,700 signatures, which rhymes with 787. And so if you'd all like to try and sign that off the website, that would be fantastic. And maybe my mama could launch this petition now onto the internet. Jonathan, press the button.
I want to be the first to sign it.
Will you? Oh, that's so kind. Thank you very much. If you'd all look at it, I'd be very grateful. All done. It's off. Isn't that fantastic? Sarah. Right, job done. Okay. Now, I got this on Monday. Just popped into the email as I was working, and I've been getting these emails for the last 7 years. And I'm getting a bit fed up with them, really. My wife Anna is an A320 pilot and had a fumes event in Australia on 28th March 14. Since then, she has stopped flying with continuous headaches, cognitive difficulties, and intense bouts of weariness. She has had ultrasound, MRI, and many blood tests with no cause established. Hence the possible relation to fumes exposure. The neurologist appointment is pending. Other crew have suffered similar problems. What do we do next to resolve this issue? Well, I'm getting a bit tired of this because this has been going on for 7 years. So I replied with the general, sending her some medical stuff. But I'm not a doctor, so I've been doing this for the last 7 years. And then I get a reply from the husband saying, "Thank you for your reply. Yes, the doctors keep alluding towards stress and depression, which is frustrating." And sadly what the doctors do is diagnose depression and antibiotics and antidepressants, and that generally kills people. So that's what's happening. Okay, as I told you, I'm just getting a bit sick of this thing, really. I've been on it for 7 years, so I've got my licence back, licence to fly. There we are. And I bought a share in this aircraft the other day, so I'm going to be instructing people to fly in the future. Tim's my first customer, I think. Anybody else? Can't wait. And maybe a bit of book publishing and various things like that. So, but to be honest, this is how I feel at the moment. Like I squeeze that bit of tube of toothpaste. I've put so much into this thing, and I think we're at the stage now where the scientists, Professor Jeremy Ramsden here, and various doctors and lawyers like Frank Cannon will take this thing forward. Right, okay. So now I'd like to introduce you Captain Cowley. Captain, are you there? Oh, thank you. Now this is a fine young man from the Madam Market Theatre who's going to give us a little presentation. Over to you, Alex Cowley.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome aboard this flight. My name is Captain Cowley. The emergency exits today are to your rear and through this passageway there, out into the fresh air of the street and the garden. The cabin crew will now be passing out activated charcoal face masks. These are to be used in the event of a fume event, and they are simply put on like so. Strapped to the back, over your head, and secured over your nose and mouth.
They don't work if you've got a beard. Where's your posh?
You smell that? Wet dog.
Can you smell something?
First officer, can you hear? Can you smell that?
No, I can't smell anything. No.
Right. No. Now, not a lot of people know this, but the only way to detect it is your nose and your eyes. Now, cabin crew have this lovely pure oxygen hood we can put on. You know those masks that drop down from the ceiling in the aeroplanes? Well, we can't deploy those. They're only for using the cabin depressurization. So, what are you guys going to do? I'm afraid, nothing. If you'd like to put on your face mask, because the smoke is getting rather thick, and if you would like to calmly evacuate the airplane.
Lunch is served in the garden. Thank you very much for your attention.
Hey, well done.